Welcome to this Lunch and Learn, and today's focus is how to conduct effective staff meetings. Now, staff meetings can mean a variety of different things for different people, all depending upon our past experiences. At one end of the spectrum, we've got ones that don't happen all that regularly. Maybe they start late. You've only got a few minutes to end up speaking. Maybe it's a bit of a blame game, identifying where things went terribly wrong so we can publicly shame people. And sometimes we come up with some great ideas in these staff meetings, but they're never really remembered or acted upon. And so the staff meetings can seem a little bit useless and a bit of a waste of time. All the way through to the other end of the spectrum, where we've got very helpful staff meetings. They happen regularly and topics are always raised that are relevant to everyone, and solutions are always generated as well from these staff meetings. We don't just focus on what needs to be done, we focus on what we're doing great as well. So sometimes we can be talking about successes and wins, and they are a very positive event. Going back to the bad staff meetings, no one wants to turn up to them. Another staff meeting, we're rolling our eyes, we're thinking, what's the point? Or we're actively trying to resist going along to them. But then these really great staff meetings are ones that are inspiring and people are re-energised because of them and more knowledgeable about what's going on around them. And they know exactly what to do in terms of any actions that have been identified within that staff meeting as well. And so we've got this huge range. So today is all about me giving you advice that I've discovered over the years of how I see effective team meetings being run. So let's go straight into identifying what's the purpose of staff meetings anyway. And as I was just explaining, the purpose can be different depending on the practice that you're working for. And it depends on where you choose to have your bias lay with these staff meetings. And so a kind of not as helpful team meeting could have the bias of the reason, the purpose that we're having our team meetings is so we can identify mistakes that are being made. We also have our team meetings to alert team to times where our systems have become broken down. We also have our staff meetings just to tell the team of new or revised actions that they are to take in the future. So it's very much a telling, this is what you'll be, and directive, this is what you'll be doing in the future. However, it can be very helpful to shift the bias, to be more inclusive, inspiring, positive. And what that looks like is this. We have our staff meetings here to discuss better ways of achieving success. We have our staff meetings here to brainstorm fresh ideas to deliver better patient experiences. We have team meetings or staff meetings at our practice to build clarity and unity around goals of the practice. Quite a difference between the two. One side is really focusing on the negative, the mistakes, the times that the systems have broken down, and saying that the practice manager or the owner have identified what to do in the future. So we're just going to tell the team members what to do. And then the other side is, as I say, far more inclusive, far more inspiring, and will achieve a greater level of success for your practice. So the benefits of staff meetings, and I want to talk about the benefits because every now and again I do come across practices that say, no, we don't have staff meetings because we manage all the issues as the month rolls by. However, that is going from that old way of thinking about staff meetings where all we do is talk about what goes wrong in the practice. And there are a whole series of additional benefits to staff meetings that your practice can enjoy even though you may be managing very effectively all the little things that happen along the way throughout the month anyway. I'm going to list a series of benefits that will hopefully inspire you to still have and still be committed to having staff meetings because there's a whole range of different things that your practice can enjoy. Number one, it helps ensure the team is aligned. One of the trickiest things is to make sure we're all moving together in a unified fashion towards the one common goal. That one common goal is highly relevant to the practice owner and quite often the practice manager as well, depending on how closely together they work. However, for the rest of the team, it's not as compelling, not as relevant, simply because they're not the owners. It doesn't need to be. We've got different areas of focus when we're an employer over an employee. So these regular communications, these regular opportunities to remind everybody what the goals are, to remind everybody the reason why we're trying to achieve these goals, can help to align the team and maintain that high sense of engagement. Number 2 benefit is it strengthens the relationships between team members and team cohesion as well. When we're in the daily operation of a dental surgery, quite often we don't get the chance to interact with each other in any other way other than a very busy project-oriented, task-oriented way. When we are gathered together as a team, it puts us in a position where we are rolling out a different form of communication. We are rolling out communication in the sense of we speak in a way that's trying to be quite clear. We are not interrupting others. We are listening intently to what others say. We are showing respect. We are joking along and being friendly with one another. We're cheering each other on as well. And so there's a whole different range of communication happening in a team meeting or a staff meeting that doesn't normally happen in the general operation of the day. And so it can help to strengthen your team as well. A third benefit is the sharing of information and the encouragement of discussion. This is kind of the logistical reason why we do meet together. We need to have a forum where we can all share information. The leaders of the organisation can say, oh, these are the areas that we need to discuss and find solutions for. But it also is a forum where we can encourage discussion around that too and start to encourage team members to share their thoughts, insights, ideas, experiences, solutions that they see for this particular topic that we've raised. And so it is a forum for that as well. Another enormous benefit for your staff meetings. A fourth benefit is the exchange of feedback about projects and ideas. Usually, it's not simply a matter of we have this topic of discussion, we're going to come up with a system or a solution or a thing to do, and then we're going to do that thing and it's going to be so wildly successful that we're never going to have to discuss it again. No, that's often not the case. Quite often what we do need to do is follow up on these kind of things that we implemented a system. Let's just pluck one out of the air. Let's say we just started doing morning huddles. Let's discuss how those morning huddles are going. Are we actually doing them? Are we gaining the value from them? The way we're managing it, do we need to manage it in any better way to achieve a higher level of success and engagement within it? And so the team meetings are a lovely opportunity to reflect back what's been going on and get any feedback about these sort of projects from your team members and any further ideas about how to make them more successful. A fifth benefit of staff meetings is to showcase leadership and also motivate your team members as well. So as the practice owner, as the practice manager, as a leader of that group, number one, you have an opportunity to lead by example, to show people this is the way we engage with each other in a very helpful, constructive way within team meetings. It's also providing the leadership an opportunity to motivate all the team members around the big why that we do these changes, that we roll out these new systems, that we focus on these different areas of the practice. Remember why we're doing it. Let's motivate everybody up, get a bit inspired about the idea and move forward for the coming month with a higher level of energy and enthusiasm. Now, when you are the practice manager or the practice owner, or quite often it's the practice receptionist or the senior dental nurse that are activating these meetings and are the kind of the driving force behind these meetings, we want to be able to structure these meetings, these staff meetings, in a way that are very, very positive and beneficial to the team members themselves. And so the management intention, the mindset we have when we're constructing how we're going to do staff meetings in our particular practice is going to be important. And number one, we always want to think, okay, one of our intentions, one of our personal goals with these staff meetings is to make sure they're informative. And so we're going to select the information that we share. We're not going to be sharing 100 things at every staff meetings, but we do want to inform everybody of relevant happenings and goings on within the practice itself. So we do want them to be informative. We also definitely want them to be inclusive. It's a common thing to be in a dental practice and they have a staff meeting and it's one person speaking at everybody else and everybody else doesn't seem to be interacting. And that's not really a fault on either side, because the owners, who are usually the ones speaking at everybody, they also say, why don't people interact and participate in this meeting in a bit of more of a lively fashion? And so it's about setting up the right expectations around that. And so if you, as the manager of these staff meetings, as the implementer, the driving force behind these staff meetings, if you have the intention to construct the structure around them in such a way that it's very inclusive, that will help that process. Also, respectful. That's another clear intention of these staff meetings. We want them to be respectful. Respectful communication, being quiet, letting each other speak, don't interrupt. When people come up with ideas, actually acknowledging them as very good ideas, and even though you personally may not see any value in them. So we do want them to be respectful. If there are any points of disagreement, that those disagreements are being aired still in a respectful fashion. We also want our intention behind these staff meetings that they are solutions focused. Quite often team meetings or staff meetings can fall into the trap of being problems focused. Let's spend most of our time speaking about the problem and who's to blame and where it went down, rather than this was the issue, this was the result of the way we managed it, and we want to get a different result. So let's focus more heavily, spend more time, more energy actually on the solution. And finally, we want to make sure that one of the intentions behind these team meetings is that they are empowering. We don't want people to leave these team meetings having recognised a whole bunch of issues and solutions, but I don't know how to roll out these solutions. I'm not quite sure if I'm the one that's supposed to be doing it. I don't feel confident enough to do it anyway. I'm not going to raise any issues at these team meetings because I don't really feel like I've got a voice here. We want everyone to be encouraging of each other, empowering each other to speak up, be frank, share their ideas, but also feel empowered with the information they require, the support they require to roll out any of these new ideas and changes that you decide upon within the team meeting as well. So we want them to be empowering places where we are looking at the people around us and questioning, what does this person need to feel empowered to move out of this meeting and do everything that we have identified as needing to be done within the team meeting itself. And finally, build excitement. We want to build the energy around rolling out these new things. If someone was told you just have to do something new, we're going to do morning huddles now. And so the morning huddle, it just means you have to turn up to work 15 minutes earlier. Then that's going to be a bit of a drag on everybody. However, if you say within one of your team meetings, one of the solutions we have decided upon to ensure that we have a more efficient running day, a more productive running day, and that we're far happier turning up to work every day because everything is smooth running, everything is under control, it can be under control. And we can see all of these enormous benefits around implementing the process of a morning huddle into our day. And that also requires us to turn up to work a few minutes earlier to make sure that we can implement this as a new system. Let's build the excitement. Let's build up what that future looks like when we're doing this new thing that we're going to, all the value we're going to enjoy, and build the excitement up so the new things that are being adopted within the practice are coming with a high level of energy. And so we can build quite a bit of excitement within these team meetings as well. How do we make time for these team meetings? Everyone is busy all the time, and there's always patients to be seen. Even when we allocate some time aside for a team meeting, it ends up being gobbled up by another patient emergency that raises up in priority in our appointment book. And so how do we actually make time for staff meetings? Number one, I always suggest, because it is difficult to add on an additional hour to a week for a team meeting, because quite often people are rostered on for specific hours. And if someone's rostered on for a full-time 38-hour week, then it creates dramas when we're doing an additional hour. So we don't want to create a bookkeeping nightmare or a rostering nightmare. And because we're saying just once a month, let's incorporate it into the lunch break and pay staff for that lunch break. And so we are going to be rolling out a team meeting while we're all snacking away on our lunch, because we are required to be working during that hour because a staff meeting is working, then we're going to pay everyone for that time as well. So hopefully majority of your team members will be quite happy with that scenario. And it's certainly been the case when I've gone into so many different practices. Incorporating staff meetings into lunch breaks and paying them for that time, I haven't actually come across much resistance around that whatsoever. And people often prefer that than staying back a bit later in the day for a staff meeting that's been locked on to the end of the day. As I said, monthly. Monthly is a really good timing for team meetings. Sometimes we have practices that have half-hour meetings every week. I'm all for it. I think the longest to run without a team meeting would be a month. So if you want to do half hours every week, go nuts. But monthly, at the very least, I think is a very good way of making sure you are maintaining that momentum of effective communication, task management that you've identified. We're going to do all these actions in between our team meetings. We need reminders about that. How are we going with that? And there's enough stuff happening in a dental surgery that once a month is a good idea. If you were doing it anything longer, like once every 3 months, you'd have to put longer aside because you're going to have so many agenda items to try to get through. Number 3, the next thing to do is make sure you pre-schedule these slots. Don't book in this month's staff meeting this month because there won't be any time left in your schedule. Hopefully you've got enough patients where there's so many patients that you won't have enough times left for your staff meeting. So these are the sort of things that you book these out months and months in advance. Like do the whole year now in front of you, and then every quarter make sure you're constantly scheduling more and more in each month afterwards. So pre-schedule all of your team meeting times out in your schedule. Make sure they're at least 60 minutes in length. And there's a couple of reasons around this. 60 minutes is a very good allocation of time to make sure you've got the time to have everyone share what's going on. If you've got a really big team, you may need longer than that. If you've got an ultra small team, just the receptionist, the nurse and the dentist, maybe you want to shorten that time down. But I often find that 60 minutes in length is a really good allocation of time because remember, we want to do more than just raise issues. We want to talk about solutions, brainstorm different ideas. And you'll see in the agenda later on what's included, what I suggest you include in your staff meeting. And because of that as well, I think 60 minutes is a pretty good allocation of time at the very least. Put aside 90 minutes though. It's a 60-minute staff meeting, but we're putting aside 90 minutes. And this is because quite often if your book has got patients all the way through to 12 o'clock and lunch is from 12 to 1, and then you've got your first patient starting in at 1 o'clock again, what happens? What's going to always happen? Do all the clinical team get out of that surgery and jump into lunch right on 12 o'clock? No way. The patient leaves at 12 if you're running right on time. And then the dental assistant has to break down the surgery, do the steri, set the surgery up for the first patient in the afternoon. That all takes at least 15 minutes to do that. The other thing that will happen if you have your staff meeting start right on 12 o'clock is it's happening during the lunch break. So people need to get themselves a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a cup of soup, a sandwich, heat up the meal from the leftovers from the night before for lunch. They've got to get themselves prepared for lunch. They also might want to check their phones, check in with the kids or something like that just before the staff meeting as well. And so we need at least a 15-minute flow period before the staff meeting officially starts to allow for all these sort of things to happen. Then we have our 60 minutes for the staff meeting itself, but then we need another flow period of 15 minutes as well, just in case we need that time. In some situations, your staff room will be large enough to conduct the staff meeting in there, but in some situations, it has to be in the waiting room. Now, if you were having a 12 to 1 staff meeting and your next patient was at 1 o'clock, you'll all be sitting around in the waiting room if that patient just happened to turn up 5 or 10 minutes early. And that's a good thing if they turn up a bit early to their appointment times. We don't mind that at all. So we don't want to make them feel uncomfortable for doing so or feel like, oh my gosh, I think I've done the wrong thing by turning up on time. Oh gosh, I'll never turn up early again. That's obviously the wrong thing to do. No, we want to make sure that we can wind up our team meeting and clear out the waiting room. So if the patient does turn up 5 or 10 minutes earlier, they come in as normal, usual operations, and they can sit there in the waiting rooms quite comfortably. The other reason why the 15-minute flow period is once you finish your team meeting, you don't jump straight back into surgery again. No, you have to put all your dishes away, you have to change into your uniform again, put your scrubs back on, open up the surgery, make sure everything's all set in readiness for that next patient as well. So putting aside 90 minutes for a 60-minute staff meeting is a great way of making sure that you're going to have enough time for your staff meeting without making everyone feel harassed and rushed around. The other thing to make sure of is that you are placing the team meeting as a high priority. So again, the inclination will be, we've got an emergency patient, we need to find some time in the book somewhere. Let's use up the staff meeting time. Do your best not to do that. If instead of a staff meeting, there was a patient booked in that spot instead, you wouldn't be saying we need to fit this emergency patient in, let's move this other patient out the spot. No. So just pretend in your mind that these staff meeting allocations within your schedule are just as important as a patient. It's just like having a patient booked in there. It's a no-go zone where we're trying to squeeze other things into the schedule. So keep it as a high priority. Attendance is one of the challenges of determining how we're going to roll these staff meetings out. When can we do it? We don't have a day where everyone's here on the same day. How do we encourage all the team members to turn up? Number one, select a day that most staff are available. There are always going to be team members that can't turn up to your staff meetings. Just embrace that as a fact of life. One of the things that really alleviated a lot of stress off my plate when I was running staff meetings was just taking my hook out of the result that it's only successful if everyone turns up. It's impossible. We're talking about human beings with all these different things going on in the world. And so stop thinking that we need everyone turning up to every staff meeting. We just want most of the people turning up to these staff meetings, and we will help communicate the messages discussed in the staff meetings in other ways. And so select the day that most staff are available and be happy with that. Provide the ability to attend virtually. And so put the word out. You don't have to turn up to the team meetings virtually. If you do, you'll be paid for the time. But please dial in on Zoom. We'll have our laptop or our iPad, or someone will hold up their iPhone for you to be able to attend virtually. So you can participate live in the team meeting if you choose to. The third thing you can do in terms of attendance is alternate the days between each month if that's beneficial. If some team members are saying, gosh, I've got things I'd like to raise too, even though I'm only in once a week, I've got things I'd like to raise as well, but I'm never there for these team meetings. If you're finding that there is a demand from other team members who are normally absent because they're not normally rostered in on that day of the team meeting, that they would like to participate, then alternate it. January's, March's, and other odd-numbered months, they're going to be on Mondays. The team meetings will be on Mondays. And February, April, and even-numbered months, they're going to be on Fridays instead. So we do put our reach out to even a broader section of our team base as well. Also, consider recording the meeting. It's so easy nowadays with our iPhones. You could record it as an audio file, you could videotape it, you could make it a Zoom meeting where others can virtually attend but record it within Zoom and then send out the recording link after the fact. So consider recording the meeting so then people who aren't able to be there live actually get to hear the live discussion, the live interaction. That will also be beneficial for them to understand that these are how our meetings run. This is how lively and wonderful they are. They might then want to dial in next time. And so that's how we manage the attendance side of staff meetings. The next thing is, how do we prepare for a really good staff meeting? And number one, identify as a group how staff are going to raise agenda items. There are so many different ways you can do that. You can put it on the whiteboard in the staff room, next meeting to discuss, and everyone can add in whatever they'd like in that way. Maybe the receptionist or the practice manager has an online calendar, and so you can just call out to them, can you put this on the next agenda? And they tap into the next staff meeting and make the addition within that, and then that can form part of the agenda that gets printed out on the day of the staff meeting. It might be that you've got a practice manager that says, if you've got anything to discuss, just tell me about it. I'll make my own notation about that, and I'm responsible to bring that up as an agenda item at the next staff meeting. You could also encourage the nursing staff, the clinical staff, to have a little pad in their surgery. So as little things are raised, they're making a notation down on it, and they bring that little notepad with them to the staff meeting, and it can be raised kind of more organically when we're asking for feedback around the group. So identify a helpful way within your practice where everyone can actually, to make sure that their particular point of discussion does get raised at the next staff meeting. Another point to do prior to the meeting in preparation for this staff meeting is the preparation of the agenda. Now, this is where we're actually collating all of these ideas on the one sheet of paper and bringing that to the team meeting, so we know how swiftly we need to get through some items, because there might be 6 items there to discuss. If there's only a couple, then we know in the running of the meeting that we can spend more time discussing each point, because there's not as many points to cover. I do suggest just limiting things to 4 to 6 points, because the more points we have, the less engaged we are in all of them as team members. There's just too much discussion going on, too many different things to discuss. And quite often, if you've got 20 points that are coming up for each of the team meetings, have a think about, do these actually need to be all discussed in a team meeting, or are some of these items more one-on-one? I just need to mention that to the receptionist, and so that I'll just do that. Make sure that the team meeting agenda items are relevant to the team. We don't want people kind of disengaging because none of these points are really relevant to me ever. And if you had 20 items as well that were relevant to everyone, you need a longer team meeting. You won't have enough time to spend on each of those agenda items to get really great results, when you also want to collaborate with everybody in the team to be able to get to those really great results. And so try to limit it to 4 to 6 items. Of course, the highest priority 4 to 6 items get preference. Another point to prepare for the next staff meeting is send reminders to staff. It can prompt them to go, oh, that's right, there was something I wanted to raise at the next staff meeting. So just give reminders out, especially if you are requiring them to bring their own lunch for the day, because we won't have the opportunity to go out and get our lunch because we're eating as we're working through this staff meeting. Or if you're catering for the staff meeting, remember, you don't need to bring lunch tomorrow because we've got our staff meeting going on. And so always send reminders to staff too, so they can prepare in whatever way they need to for the staff meeting. And here we go, the catered lunch I just mentioned before. This is another point to prepare for. If your practice, in acknowledgement that your team members are going to be working through their lunch break, want to make sure that you cater the lunch for them as a bit of a thank you, then make sure you're doing it in a way that makes sense. For example, a catered lunch which requires a lot of picking off the plate will be distracting. They'll be more engaged in selecting what next thing to eat rather than engaging in what the discussion is. If it needs to be kept hot, that's a difficult logistical thing to make sure that when does the food get delivered? Come on, everyone, the food's getting cold again. Hot food's quite often yummier than the cold stuff. And so we're more focused on the food rather than actually getting the conversation going within the staff meeting. So make it something easy to eat, easy to plan for. Something like Subway is a really great idea. You don't have to plan for it until the day of. You give them a ring for how many people, how many vegetarians, for example, and then someone races out and grabs it and brings it back. I think sometimes they even deliver them as well. And they are easy to eat and they're yummy as well. And so I love the catered lunch idea, but I also love it when it's not overcomplicating the process. In preparation as well for your staff meetings, make sure that someone is bringing along the copy of the last team meeting minutes, because within that, there's going to be the to-do list that we identified. We're going to make sure that this action gets done and pop that on the to-do list, and this person's going to call that person. We've got a to-do list from the last team meeting, and we want to have that followed up on in this coming staff meeting. So make sure someone's bringing the minutes with them from the last team meeting. So the management of the staff meeting itself. Number one, start on time. Even if everyone hasn't gathered yet, get people into the routine and the thought process of, oh, these meetings are going to be starting right on time. And even though not everyone's going to be there right on time in the first, second, third meeting, soon they'll see this is what happens here. We are starting on time, so I've got to get there earlier now. And so do start on time, because what happens if we say we're going to be starting our meeting at 12? We've given everyone the 15-minute flow time to prepare for that, to close their surgery down, open it up, and all the things that we need to do, get our lunch organised. And everyone turns up right on time at 12, and then we're still waiting for others, and so we don't start the meeting yet. And then it's 5 past, and everyone's chit-chatting. Yeah, fantastic. And then not everyone's still there. And so it's 10 past 12, and we're still not there. And everyone's like, come on, everyone, come on. It's 10 past 12 now. Come on, everybody, gather. And that is the habit of the staff meetings. What's going to happen when those people who are normally there right on time, right on 12 o'clock, what if they think, oh, I've got to ring somebody? Oh, well, the team meeting never starts on time. I'm going to quickly ring them now. And now that person's one of the ones that is dilly-dallying before getting there to the staff meeting. No, so every time while you're getting into the routine of a very constructive staff meeting, make sure that when you say it's 12 o'clock, you're starting at 12 o'clock, even if you're sitting there by yourself, because it's going to start this routine, this slow, progressive awareness that these meetings start on time. And the second important thing is finish on time. Don't allow them to drag out longer. And then please don't ever be late for your first patient for the afternoon. It's a terrible thing to be a patient waiting in the room for an appointment time. Your time is valuable, just like theirs is. You can hear them all chattering, but they're not seeing you on time. It's a terrible thing. So even if you haven't got through all of your agenda items, even if you're tapping into a really crucial discussion, put a pin in it and agree to meet later on in the day or through the week. Make sure you're seeing your first patient on time. And you also want to be finishing on time too, because your team members need time to get back into their scrubs again and get themselves organised for the afternoon session. The third point around staff meeting management is to appoint a scribe to take the minutes. And so always have somebody either tapping away on an iPad or a laptop, or writing physical notes down, or even recording a voice audio file of it so they can type up the minutes later on. But appoint somebody to make all of the important notations, the important actions are being identified and added to the to-do list, etc., by the scribe. And that scribe, that can be a different person for each of the team meetings as well, making sure that you're getting that deeper level of engagement from all of your team members. So you're allocating different people each time to be the scribe. The next point is to make sure that you lead by example within these team meetings. And we mentioned it before, it is a lovely opportunity to lead by example. You know, especially if you haven't been having really effective team meetings, or maybe none at all in your practice, when we start something new, the rest of the team will be looking at the leaders of the organisation of how to behave with these team meetings. And so make sure that you're leading by example. You are turning up right on time, ready for that meeting to start on time. You're really encouraging it to finish on time. When it's your turn to speak, you are being succinct, to the point, not saying all these long, drawn-out stories about the topic that you're raising. You are listening attentively, respectfully when other people are speaking. You're encouraging of other people's interactions, etc. So lead by example, and everyone will start to follow suit. The next point with the staff meeting management is to consider sharing the role of moderator, or the one that kind of facilitates, the main person that's running the meeting. Don't just allocate it to one person. You can if you wish, but I think it's a missed opportunity to build further skills, new skills in all of your other team members. And so do consider sharing that role of moderator around. Again, they're watching the leaders on how they do it. They're slowly being trained into how to moderate an effective meeting. And what does the moderator do rather than just raise up those agenda items? They keep the meeting to time. So they're the ones that saying it's 12 o'clock, we're starting right on time, let's start right now. And they're always saying, we've got 10 minutes left, everyone. Keep that in mind. We're going to be finishing up right on 1 o'clock. They also keep the discussions on point. If they do find one team member rambling along with these big, long stories about their topic, just remind them respectfully, okay, let's just bring it back to the topic itself. We don't have an enormous amount of time. So they're keeping discussion on point. And what can also happen is that people start to bounce off different ideas and different discussions and different contributions, but we're straying way off the point here. So bringing everyone back to point, and that we're not devoting onerous amounts of times for each point. The next one is to ensure that everyone has a voice. So the moderator is looking around, making sure that everyone is contributing. If they're not, they're trying to encourage that contribution for that person. Sally, did you have any ideas around this particular idea, for example? Or Sally, did you have any agenda items that aren't on the list that you would like to raise today? And of course, they move through the agenda items themselves, and they can get agreement from the rest of the team. If you've got 10 agenda items, then you can discuss as a group. We're not discussing any of these points here. I'm just raising them so we know which ones to discuss first, second, third, fourth, fifth, because we may not get through this whole list today. And then what the moderator can do around the agenda items as well is we've identified the 6 top priority agenda items that we're going to discuss today, but we've only got 10 minutes left. We're only at agenda item number 4. Is everyone happy that we leave this current discussion, move to the next agenda item, or should we push those other 2 to the next meeting and we'll stick on this very important agenda item number 4? And so that's what the moderator does too. So they're always making sure that things are running to time and adjusting the content within that staff meeting as you go. So the agenda itself, what order do we say things? What do we cover? Number 1, the first thing to cover off is the previous meeting minutes to-do list or action list, the things that you identified at the last team meeting that needed to be done. Go through that list, get feedback from the people that were delegated with rolling these actions out. Have they done them? If they have partially done them, where are we at with those things? If they haven't done them, let's get a new due date to get that done and build up that level of importance over that thing again. Are there any barriers to getting these things done? And so that's the very first thing to do in your team meeting, is to make sure you're covering off quickly the to-do list from last time. The second thing to do, because it does tend to bring about an optimistic, inspiring feeling to the meeting, it sets the tone quite possibly, is to call out any wins, achievements and positive acknowledgements of the people around you. Sometimes people may say, oh yeah, we've been asking for Google reviews and I've asked for a couple and they actually ended up on our Google review list. How exciting is that? That's great. Or we've been wanting to get the morning huddle rolled out. It's been rolled out. It's been an absolute winner. We're all enjoying it. So good on us for actually getting that new system implemented so successfully. And in terms of acknowledgements, you may be having a process at your practice where you've got an acknowledgement jar where if you see a team member doing something particularly fabulous, you're writing it down on a note, popping it in the jar, and that jar gets brought out at this point in this monthly staff meeting. Maybe someone has had a recent experience of seeing a staff member manage a particularly challenging situation particularly well. You go, I want to call out this person because they're a winner. So call out wins, achievements and acknowledgements as the next point of your team meeting, because it really does set an effective, successful tone for the meeting. Number 3 item on your agenda is to then move through the agenda items, adding particular action tasks to the to-do list. So you've got your rolling to-do list that may still have a couple of items from last month, but you've got your new items for this month being added to it. And remember, the scribe needs to be doing that. And so move through the agenda items and modify the to-do list is the 3rd item on the agenda. The 4th item is to gain clarity around that to-do list and agreement around that to-do list. And so move through each of those items, making sure everyone understands that the task is on the to-do list and who's doing that task and what their due date is around it, and getting clarity around what it means to roll out that task. And so you're making sure that the to-do list is going to be rolled out as effectively as possible. And so gain that clarity around the to-do list as the 4th point on your agenda. The 5th point is decide or announce the date of the next staff meeting. We want them to be scheduled far off into the distance. And so hopefully it's just announcing this is our next staff meeting date. So if you've got to-do items to be done by the next staff meeting, you've got your due date. Some due dates will be far shorter than that, but make sure that everyone is aware of when the next staff meeting is happening. The next area I want to cover is relaying information to non-attenders, the people that couldn't actually turn up to the meeting. How are we going to make sure they get to hear about what's going on in these staff meetings? Quite often what can happen is that the minutes will be typed up and then emailed out to everybody. And then nobody reads the minutes and everyone's frustrated. Why isn't anybody reading the minutes? People's management of their emails are wildly different. I look at my email every 10 minutes. And because it's so much a part of my work, I action items within those emails quickly and swiftly. However, there are other people who don't manage email in that way at all. They don't need to. They may only look at their email once a week or once a month, and they may miss things because there's a whole bunch of spammy, newslettery subscriber emails within it all. So they end up missing out on seeing a minutes of the last staff meeting come through to their inbox. And then if they do tap into it, there's no sense of urgency to read through those minutes now. So if they don't have the time in that moment to read through those minutes, then they will delay it in their head to another day, but then never quite get back to it. So recognize this as normal human behavior and work with that. And so don't rely on a system that's proven itself to be ineffective when you're trying to get team members to read through staff meeting minutes. This is another way around it. Number one, I've found this to be enormously successful. A lot of practices now have a WhatsApp group for their particular practice where all the team members are involved in the WhatsApp group. Recording a short video summary, just 1 to 2 minutes, briefly covering off the main important topics that is relevant to everyone and posting that to the WhatsApp group is a very effective way of having everybody in the moment have the time and the opportunity, and it's right there in front of them, to quickly get the important key points that were discussed in that team meeting. The second idea is to print off the minutes to the staff meeting, place them in the staff room, right on the staff room table, where everyone sits around to do the morning huddles, to have a coffee, to have their lunch, to chit-chat, and have a space there. Maybe you want to do a little grid which has everyone's initials there, and then a space for them to sign off or tick off that they were actually in attendance to the meeting, so they don't actually need to read the minutes, and so they can tick themselves off or put a little signature there. Or if they were a non-attender, that they have actually read those team meeting minutes, and then they click off and then they tick off. And so that's a very effective way, because you're catching people in a moment where they've got a couple of minutes to read through something. Even better, they've got the other team members there too. So if they want to gain greater clarity over one particular point, they can ask the others who were at the team meeting, what happened on this point? That's interesting. What do they mean by this? So that's also a very effective way of making sure that non-attenders get a chance to get the content of the staff meeting, get all the messages that were raised. A third idea around how to get these messages across to non-attenders of the staff meeting is to have a 5-minute one-on-one chat with each staff member when they are next in. Now, it seems like this would be time-consuming and onerous, but in action, it has never been that way. And so I think it's a really tremendous idea. You grab the staff member when they've next got an opportunity, you've got the staff meeting minutes possibly sitting already on the staff room table, and you just step through them quickly and make sure if they have any questions, you make sure that you've actually gone through with them one-on-one each of these key points. And so I've always found that to be pretty successful as well. The last thing I want to cover is how to make sure that we are providing the right environment to make sure all of these to-do list items, all of these action tasks that we've identified need to get done, actually get done. We don't want to fall into that trap of every team meeting. The first thing we do is remind ourselves of all the things that we should have done that we never did. So we want to create the environment for success. And how do we do that? Number one, the morning huddle is so great when it comes to providing reminders and prompts, keeping all of these things both important and urgent in team members' minds. The morning huddle is so effective at doing that. And so the morning huddle, as you know it, normally you're covering off who's coming in today, what materials do we need, what processes are we going, are the OPGs attached, are people taking their antibiotic cover, all of the things for the daily operation are covered in the morning huddle. A wonderful thing to have at every morning huddle is a focus. What are we focusing on today? or this week or this month or this quarter. Some things, if you're changing, for example, the team dynamics, the way the team actually interact with each other, that might be a daily focus for a series of months before everyone slowly is aligned with this new way of functioning and behaving with one another. However, if it's something small, like remember we're asking for Google reviews, that might be something that you are just going to be doing for 2 weeks. It's a daily focus for 2 weeks. But with your items on your action list, on your to-do list that you've got for your staff meeting, list them in your morning huddle as part of the daily focus. Remember, Sally, you were going to do this, and receptionist, you were going to do that. Boss, you were going to double check the fee list. So add them to the morning huddle as gentle, friendly prompts and reminders to make sure that these items remain both important and urgent in team members' minds. Morning huddle can be super effective at that. If you don't have the morning huddle to do that, then you can then rely on WhatsApp messages. If you wish, you do need to delegate that as a task to somebody, making sure that we're tapping that out or doing a quick video. The quick video could just be, or the message could just be, remember what your to-do list items are. Do you have anything on the to-do list to get done by the next staff meeting? And a third way is quite often within the dental software, you've got all the practitioner appointment columns within the schedule, and you'll have one that's called admin or miscellaneous or reception, and that's where you can also add reminders for all of these action items, just to make sure we are appearing in people's brains again over and over and over again, because we need those reminders. We all need those reminders in order to get these sort of things done. Otherwise, we all go back into our usual routine that didn't include doing that new thing. So recognize what people do need, what kind of support they do need, and create the environment for success. Don't just allow an environment for failure, but create the environment for success. And also the whiteboard. Use the whiteboard to do little reminders as well. Not everyone always reads the whiteboards, depending on how it's used, but the whiteboard, if that's an action-packed place where you've got your shopping list for the practice as well, you could also have the to-do list there also. So if you move through your staff meetings, arranging the structure, the preparation, the agenda, the follow-up, like I've just described, I assure you, you're going to get enormous value from your staff meetings. And practice makes perfect as well. If you have not done staff meetings before and your team don't see any value in it, then allow them the time to have a few staff meetings run very well under their belt, and they'll start having far more faith and trust in them and gaining that great value from them as well. We always want them to be upbeat, friendly, encouraging. So do try to avoid that old style of staff meeting where it's just telling people off and speaking at people, rather than having them be involved in all of the solutions and brainstorming different ideas of making the dental practice even more effective than what it already is. Good luck with your staff meetings. If you would like any assistance at all, please do let me know.